Hey everybody, welcome to the Pilot Studios show, episode 59. My name is Ben Ferrari. I publish comic books as Pilot Studios. I've made tons of books over the years. Um, maybe 8 years ago, I had a wall with 40 of my books on the wall, so I'm guessing I'm near 100 books. But the way I learned initially how to make comic books was back in the 90s. I worked for Rob Liefeld's Extreme Studios. Had a great time. Overall, the best time of my whole life. I have nothing but fond memories. I will always speak highly of my experience there, and the time I had and the friends I made and what I learned. It was amazing. I told a story, maybe episode 52 of this show, where Rob showed who he truly was. An asshole. He was a prick. He is a prick. I watch his show regularly to this day, his Robservations, and I love it. He's a great historian in comics, anecdotal stories. He has, interesting opinions. He's extremely arrogant. He's he's full of himself. He'll always put himself in the best light. He'll never admit when he's wrong. All of that being said, I still watch his show and I value him, I value his show. I enjoy it, but he's a dick, and he makes crappy comics. That's the sad part. As a massive former fan, I worked for him. I idolized him. Turned out he was a prick, and I go into the details on that story, I believe, in episode 52 of this show. This episode is called How I Got Fired from Extreme Studios. All of episode 52's story happened after San Diego Comic-Con 1995. So must have been late July, 27th or so was a Sunday, or at least it was, last year. So around the 27th of July, 1995, terrible experience. Approximately 2.5 months or so later, I had another experience that made me want to quit the studio. And you have to understand that to experience something like that, to want to quit the best job I could ever hope to have, it was traumatic. Rob has a love of the juice. He wants to know the gossip. He wants to know what's going on. And he would ask me that regularly through my time there. What's the juice? What are people saying? He wanted me to report on my friends, is the bottom line. And you have to understand, I was making friends. I would do my job during the day as an assistant editor to Matt Hawkins, and to Extreme generally, but specifically Matt Hawkins. And then I would go into the bullpen. I'm an artist, and I would take paper and my art supplies and reference comics, and I would sit in the bullpen with these pencilers and inkers and letterers and, a guy doing just spotting the blacks in inks, other assistants, colorists. I would hang out in the evening. I'd be there till 9 or 10 every night, and I'd go home, I'd sleep, and I'd come back to work the next day. So I had some idea what was going on, but not really. Nobody was talking intimately to a 19-year-old. But Rob would ask me regularly, what's the juice? What did this person say? And when I did know, I would lie. You cannot ask me to report on my friends. I think most of his, a lot of his diehard fans who are completely enamored and think he's some kind of god will tell me, I believe they would say to me that, yeah, you should tell him what he wants to know. You are his employee. He's given you that opportunity. And I say that's bullshit. You ask people to report on their friends, you're a dick. So that's what happened. And it was regular. It was over and over and over that I was asked to report on my friends. And a guy named Anthony Wynn, amazing penciler. He loved Marc Silvestri's work. He was not a Rob Liefeld clone like a lot of the guys were. Not everybody was a Liefeld clone, and obviously Rob was able to get past his own ego and hire people that weren't, clones of himself, but a lot of his guys were. And I think that kind of friction led to Anthony Wynn being fired. The specifics on that is not for me to say. I've talked to Anthony recently, and there was you know, he had an issue. They came at blows, not physically, but they no longer, you know, Rob was no longer interested in having him around and fired him. Okay, fine. So I, along with, I want to say Eric Stevenson, but that's a guess, went down an elevator with Anthony Wynn. I was carrying some of Anthony's things in a box. Anthony was carrying some of his things in a box. Did Anthony tell me what his plans were? Probably not. Maybe, but, you know, as a general recollection, probably nothing specific. But sure enough, after I got back, Rob said, you know, or at least his guy, one of his guys said, "What did Anthony say? What is he doing?" And I said, "I don't know." You know, did I lie? Maybe. I'm leaving it open to that because, you know, he would ask me all the time and I would lie. Within a day or two, I was told that I was not a good liar, and that if I didn't tell Rob what he wanted to know, I would be fired. I wasn't fired at that point, but I was told in no uncertain terms that I was a bad liar and I needed to start reporting on my friends. That was enough to make me want to quit the job, you know, and I didn't quit, but I went looking for another job, and I thought it was reasonable to give my 2 weeks notice. I had a friend who worked at a hotel parking cars, and I mentioned that offhandedly, you know, I think I can get a job parking cars, but I did not quit the job. When Rob found out that I was looking for another job, or that I'd given my 2 weeks, whatever he heard, he fired me. So I went off to unemployment agency in California, and I signed up. And I have that right here. I have this piece of paper that I've been holding on to since 1995, specifically the 16th of October, 1995. I was making $6 an hour. I edited comic books. It was the kind of work I did. My employer was Extreme Studios. It says, "Had you been warned about your conduct, attendance, work, etc.?" I said no. I said, "I had many friends who were unhappy at the studio. Some of them had plans to find other work. I was told that if I did not inform my boss of the buzz, I could lose my job. Because this definitely is not part of my job description, I informed my immediate supervisor that I was looking for other work. I didn't quit, but said I was looking around. 2 hours later, after the owner had heard this, I was fired. So to wrap it up, I gave 2 weeks notice and I was told to leave. Is that legal?" That's what I wrote on this official unemployment form. I was then, Extreme actually fought it, that I shouldn't get unemployment because I quit. They said that I quit, which was not the case. So I said, okay, well, there was going to be a hearing. I signed up, and they gave me a date. I went down to this hearing. Nobody showed up from Extreme Studios to contradict my side of the story. So whatever, I got my couple $100 a week unemployment and went on with my life. It is 30 plus years later. Everything's great. I have a nice life. You know, I don't regret my decisions at all as far as Extreme Studios. Things I did. I had tons of fun. The way it ended was the worst way something like that could have ended, though. You know, and that I don't blame myself at all. I did what I thought was right. It's sad. It's extremely sad. I think about it with sadness all the time. Not regret, again, because I did what I thought was right, and it is what it is. He is who he is, you know. I'll consider this part 2. Decades went by. The internet came along. I started to have some contact with Rob. I talked with him a little bit. He sort of apologized online. No, I don't have any of that proof. I've deleted emails in my Gmail account over the years, and that's gone. But he did sort of apologize. We had some nice exchanges. And then I backed I was part of one of his groups, Extreme Studios group on Facebook. And he had a Kickstarter out for a book called Brigade that he was putting out again. and I backed it. I put $40 down on Brigade. I never got it. Years went by. I never got it. If you look on the Kickstarter and the Indiegogo campaigns for Brigade Returns, I think it was called, half the people or so, as a guess, did not receive their books, including myself. And I wrote to him regularly, nice emails saying, hey, I'm waiting for my books. Here's my address. Send me a refund if you're not going to send them, whatever. Did that over and over and over. Eventually, he blocked me, kicked me out of that extreme group, oh well, and blocked me. And here we are years later, no sign of those books. And that's, that's where my relationship stands with Rob. Last year, San Diego Comic-Con, so 2025 San Diego, I made my way over to Artist Alley, walking around on a break. I was there with my current publisher. And I'm walking down his aisle, and there he is at his table. He's all alone. There's no lines or anything, so it was a slow moment for him. And he saw me and was not surprised or shocked or rude. He just said, "Hey, Ben." I said, "Hey." He's like, he kind of waves me over, like he may have said, "We got to talk," or something like that. Okay. So I walked towards him, and he's now on his phone. Maybe he was on his phone already. And he says, "You know what? I got to take this. It's my son. We'll talk later." Okay. So I kept going. And that's the last contact I've had with him, and whatever. It was meaningless. It was a power move on his part. "Hey, come here. Now go away." Hilarious. And that's it. That's my Rob Liefeld story on how I got fired from Extreme Studios and where I am right now. Blocked for the most part everywhere. I still listen to his show because, as insane as he is, he's, he knows comics and he loves comics. That's palpable on his show. I have a grand time listening to it. So, that'll do it for episode 59 of the Pilot Studios show.